Last night, Diane and I were watching a movie on Netflix. It was pretty powerful, and it's that typical action-packed movie, the one that's out there. It's a conspiracy movie. We're listening to this one part, and there's a person talking to a government official, and the government official says these words. He says, "America needs an enemy right now because it's too internally focused. Americans are fighting among themselves." And I thought to myself, that is so true. It's true. It's a truism. However, is the answer we need another enemy? I don't think that's actually the answer. I think the answer is we need to learn what Jesus was telling us early on. Love your neighbor, right? Now, a few videos ago, I was talking about emphasizing the truth in that command to love your neighbor. This week, let me share with you a little quote from Paul from the book of Romans. You remember Paul, he's the one who gets knocked off the horse. He's a Jew, a Pharisee. He's all of these great things, gets knocked off his horse or donkey or whatever it was, falls to the ground, gets blinded, gets his sight back after 3 days. Powerful story. Becomes a world-class disciple of Jesus. And he says these words in Romans 13, 8 through 10. He says, "Owe no one anything except to love each other. For the one who loves another has fulfilled the law. For the commandments, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not covet, and any other commandment are summed up in this word, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no wrong to a neighbor, therefore love is fulfilling of the law, is the fulfilling of the law." Just love that. If we really want to follow what God has instructed of us, if we want to go back to the first 5 books of the Bible, the Old Testament, the Torah law, the 613 laws, if you include the 10 commandments in there, you've got all of these laws in place, and it's just absolutely thought-provoking that Jesus narrowed it down to 2, and Paul is reiterating that. Now, if you're an Old Testament person and you just love the Old Testament, listen to these words from Leviticus 19. It says, "Forget about the wrong things people do to you. Don't try to get even. Love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord." Love your neighbor. Love your neighbor. Now, how are we going to do that? We've been talking a little bit about the way in which we can kind of do this by looking at a book written by Gary Chapman a few years ago called The 5 Love Languages. We did an introduction video to these 5. We talked about words of affirmation. We've talked about acts of service. Today, I want to talk about the third one, and it is the giving of gifts. The giving of gifts or the receiving of gifts. Each of us differs in one of the 5 gifts that we have. We have a primary love language and a secondary love language. At least that's what I believe. And all the love languages can change after a while. If you've been deprived of one or the other, it's going to be something you're going to want, right? I think that's natural. But in this case, receiving gifts, what does it mean? Now, this one often gets, maligned. Because when we talk about receiving gifts, if someone's love language is receiving gifts, how do you do that with a neighbor? Do you go out and buy them new lawn equipment? Do you buy them a new car, a new house? What does loving your neighbor look like if their love language is receiving gifts? That's a good question. I think it's a really good question. And it gets maligned because people begin to think, well, you're just materialistic. If you just want gifts from people, then, the bigger the gift, the more you're loved, or at least that's how some people want to portray it. But that's not actually what receiving of gifts is. It's a little different than that. In fact, I would tell you right now that if someone says, my love language is the receiving of gifts, and you go ahead and buy them a gift, and they say, well, it's not a nice enough gift, it's a red flag in the relationship. You have to make a decision right then and there. There was a young person years ago who was dating a young woman, and they got really serious, and they went and looked at rings, and she wanted a specific ring, and that ring would have cost him a third of his annual income. And he came to me and he said, what do you think about this? And I said, well, if you don't want to spend a third of your income, there are other rings to show your love that are just as valid to that. And so he went and found a similar ring, similar style, from another merchant, and it was beautiful. It was absolutely gorgeous, but it was nowhere near that cost. Still same size, but nowhere near the cost. And when he let it be known that he was going to give her a different ring, this young lady lost her mind. She was so upset that she said, if you don't give me that ring, you don't love me. To which the young man questioned everything and then came back to me and asked me what I thought. And I said, if her love is contingent on the gifts you give her and the size of those gifts, you're going to have a long, hard life. It's true, because love, when we're receiving of gifts, if that's your love language, it's not necessarily about the size of the gift. It's the idea that the gift has intention. For example, let's say you find out a neighbor loves snickerdoodles, and their best memory of their childhood was eating those snickerdoodles. And so you take it upon yourself, because you found out their love language is a receiving of gifts. You go and find the snickerdoodle recipe that person's mother used, and you cook those up and you deliver them to that person. In that moment, you've demonstrated a love language, and you know theirs in the receiving of gifts, and so you give it to them. And it is the intent underneath the gift. Another way to look at this is the person who, within your office or maybe someone you know, they always send you a card, right? I had an aunt who always sent cards for every birthday, every anniversary. She was amazing. She had like hundreds of grandkids and family and aunts and uncles, and she took care of everybody, always sent a card. Her love language was that card. When she sent you that card with that little St. Christopher medal in it, she was letting you know she loved you. She loved you with all she had. And that was her love language. And so really, if you wanted to help her or show her love, the thing is to return that. Send a card with a letter in it. And that would do more than ever buying her anything. Some people need to realize that. That if someone's love language is the receiving of gifts, it's the intention underneath the gift. And some people's love languages require that they receive gifts. And you can act out of your own love language. Maybe yours is acts of service, or you cut the lawn for them, you do all these other great things, and they go, I don't even know you. And you go, well, wait a minute, I did all this great stuff. How could you not know me? And they say, well, the reality is you didn't show me that you love me. And you can rattle off all the things you've done or said, words of affirmation or physical touch, gave them a hug, whatever. But for them, receiving of the gift is the most important thing you can do, because that's how they understand love. Somebody who's receiving of gifts is their love language. One of the ways you can show you love them is simply to bring them a souvenir from wherever you are. Where if you travel and they collect spoons, get a spoon, little baby spoon, whatever it might be, and bring it back to them. It might cost you $12. But they're going to receive that spoon, and they're going to know that you love them, because while you were on vacation, you thought of them. And for them, that is like, that's better than anything you could ever done. That little gift, that little tchotchke, that little moment, that's the gift that matters to them. So this receiving of gifts is so important for us to remember. It's not about money. It's not about what you spend. It's about the intention underneath the gift. And then this is kind of the flip side to this. Looking to love your neighbor means looking to see what their love language is. And if it's not yours, changing the way you show love to the way they show love is loving your neighbor as yourself. Because we'd all want somebody to love us in the way that we see love. So why shouldn't we do that for others? And here's a really kicker to it. That if you go ahead and try to love another in their love language, or look for their love language, I will guarantee you your own mindset will change about your neighbors, about the world in which you live, and about this idea of loving your neighbor as yourself. A gift with meaning requires attention to a person's life and then making decisions to love them in the way that they can receive that love. And a final thought: if someone is into receiving of gifts, remembering their birthday, the holidays, just in any way you can to give them something on that day is going to mean the world to them. So let's go out. Let's try to love our neighbor today. And let's look for the people who need to be the ones who receive gifts. And let's think of something that could be powerful. Maybe it's for the waitress down the way. Maybe it's for somebody at work. They're the ones who always put the parties together. They're the ones who make sure there are balloons up. They're the ones who buy the cakes and create the outings. Or maybe it's someone in your family who always sends you a card or a St. Christopher's medal. I don't know. But let's go love the world the way Christ would love the world if it were someone whose love language is the receiving of gifts. Hope this was helpful to you today. We'll be going through the last two over the course of the next week or two. God bless you.